Should you get the Fosi Audio Gr40 if you are new to the world of audiophile products, things like tube amps, DACs, etc.? We're going to explore that today because this is my first experience with a tube amplifier. It's a complete introduction for me for what is a tube amplifier, what they can offer, how this sounds, and why you might want one. Now, to get things started, what is a tube amp and why would you want a tube amp? Well, to kind of boil all of this down, a tube amp uses a more analog way of converting and amplifying a signal from whatever audio source you might have. In this case, these tubes are from an American company, and you can actually swap the tubes out for different tubes and those will affect the sound. Now, I'm not going to get into how these works, but there is some kind of physical action that's going on. It's not all completely digital and it's not happening within like a computer chip per se. That's why there's tubes. That's why they need some time to warm up. And that's kind of why I love using this, because it has a sound that's a little bit more organic, a little bit richer, and a little bit fuller. And that's just what you're gonna get from using a tube amp. First, I'd have to disclose Fosi Audio did send this out to me for review. No money changed hands. And to be honest, I'm completely new to the world of this kind of stuff. So I have no idea whether or not this is high end, whether or not this is low end, but I can tell you that I really, really enjoy using it. Now, let's get some specs or some brief specs out of the way. You have a couple of different inputs for this tube amp. You can use it over USB. There's a USB-C port in the back if you have it hooked up to your computer the way I do. You can also do an optical in if you have optical audio, let's say coming from a TV or coming from another source, and it will get you higher quality in theory. There's also the ability to just go ahead and use a coax cable on the back. And coax might be kind of like the oldest style of amplification or the oldest connector that we have on here. Your outputs. Now your outputs on this, you're gonna have a coax left and right signal. You've probably seen this before back in the day when hooking up things like a Nintendo or a Sega Dreamcast and you have the 3 cables. Well, this is for left and right audio. You also have a regular headphone jack out. You also have a USB receiver on this, and you have a spot on the back for an antenna if you have a home audio setup that requires some kind of wireless audio solution, or if you have this hooked up to some speakers and you just want to use it with your cell phone. But this way you have a variety of different inputs, and you can use this with both a wireless setup and a wireless setup in your home. You can still enjoy the kind of warm, rich sound that you're gonna get from a tube style amp. On the front, you have 2 knobs with really, really nice kind of positive feeling middle points of them so that you can adjust the treble and the bass, but there isn't any other kind of more granular change that you can do to the sound. Now, actually using this tube amp, and the 3rd knob, by the way, is on and off. You hold it to turn it on, hold it to turn it off, and then you can adjust the volume of it. And you have a nice little display on the front with little lights and signals telling you whether or not you're using USB, optical, coax, or Bluetooth for your inputs on here. Now, what's been my experience using this? Well, I have a couple of different wired DACs that I'll use for IEMs or even to drive a pair of headphones. I get to play around with my friends' tube amps, and I've got friends that are audiophiles, so I get to really try a bunch of different audio equipment without fully jumping into the hobby of being an audiophile. And shout out to my group of Russian friends, Mike, Daniel, I love you guys. And they've really given me the opportunity to kind of explore a bunch of audiophile stuff without buying it for myself, and they do a good job of explaining this to me. What impact does this have on sound? How does this change the listening experience? Well, first of all, tube amps in general usually give you a warmer, richer sound that is a little bit more bass, but a little bit less clarity. And when comparing this tube amp and a pair of wired headphones, other DACs I have, or even to the built-in DAC of my MacBook Pro, I can tell you that this definitely adds a bit of warmth and a bit of fullness. at the sacrifice of some clarity, especially in the low end. Is that a bad thing? Well, it depends on what you're using this with. I didn't particularly love the sound coming out of this with a pair of wired IEMs, but I definitely really like the sound that this thing puts out when I hook it up to my Edifier MR3 studio monitors here in my studio. I find that it really adds an extra layer to the music, and it really adds a fullness and a thump to the music, which I don't get when just having these speakers plugged into my MacBook Pro. In regards to the amplification amount, I couldn't tell you that. Frequency response, that's not really what I have knowledge about, so I'm not going to try and talk about those things. But I will tell you that if you are someone that does love music, maybe you have a pair over-ear headphones, maybe you have a couple pairs of IEMs, and you're looking for something to add a new dimension or a bit of a new experience to your listening sessions, this thing is pretty sweet. I really enjoy the kind of analog experience. I love seeing the tubes light up, but you do have to know that when you do get this in the box, the tubes are separate from the amplifier. And the whole process of trying to put them in and making sure that the tube prongs line up can be a little bit of a hassle, especially if you don't know how much force you can actually exert on it, like myself. And I actually ended up taking this thing apart to try test fitting the tubes first to make sure that the pins for the tubes matched up well and that I wasn't breaking something. Taking this thing apart was quite simple. You just have 2 screws on the back. Make sure that you unplug the antenna for Bluetooth. I ended up ripping that antenna out and I had to fix it later myself. That was a little bit of a hassle. Well, should you buy this? I think that if you already have a nice pair of studio monitors or a nice pair of speakers, adding something like this is a great way to really hear your music in a different way. And if you're like a vinyl person or you have a bunch of CDs and you want to add an extra layer of kind of analog feel to the music, this is awesome. I did use this to listen to a variety of different music, everything from Boston to some hip hop, some R&B, and definitely some electronic music. And I have to say that as someone that's never experienced the sound or the feel of a tube amp, listening to this with electronic music really made it feel more like I was at a concert, the way big concert monitors and stuff like that sound, because there's an extra added thump and kind of feel to the music that I don't have just plugging my Edifier MR3s into the computer. And I have to say that at the price point that this Fosi Audio Gr40 comes in at, it's a very compelling entry-level tube amplifier. And on top of that, let's say you have really expensive tubes or you have other tubes that you want to use. Being able to switch these tubes out and use different tubes is really cool. I know that people that are deep into audio gear are probably yelling at the screen right now because I'm oversimplifying this for people. But I think if you have a home studio setup, or even if you have a home editing setup like this, you definitely might want to try this because it's going to change your listening experience. It's going to change the way you listen to music, and it's going to be versatile enough that if you don't want this at your desk, or if you want to use this in a bigger room and you want to go ahead and use your phone connected to it, it gives you all of those options. And the fact that it has a Bluetooth antenna really means that you can make this kind of the home of, or the center, I should say, of your home audiophile setup. If you want to pick this up, I'll have links to where you can do so in the description down below, and I'll go ahead and put it in the comments. And until next time, it's been Mitchell. Peace.